one of the other things that was present in our last conversation was a discussion about hope. And I'll do my best to characterize what I interpret of your premise on hope, in particular to dying, which is something along the lines of hope is when we write off today for the prospect of a better future, and that when it comes to dying, hope by no means serves us because, like, what is it that we're hoping for? Because dying is still there. Um, and I really, really appreciated your connection to with the hope thing insofar as matrimony as well, like hoping for a beautiful relationship instead of being in the one that could be beautiful right now, lying next to that person. Um, and I want to bring this to what you've skirted around, which is the environmental crisis that we as a human species and as a planet and all the species upon it are facing right now. And given
Or not
that,
facing.
what, what do you,
Or not facing right
or
now.
not facing? Yes. Okay. Sorry, I thought you said we're
Yes.
not facing. I was like, oh, but yes, I want to bring it there. And I feel like I grasp a sense of understanding around where hope fails us, insofar as dying, insofar as taking us away from the present moment, and where hopelessness stands in when we realize hope won't work, and then that just exacerbates the same cycle, and that
Hmm.
you say we should give ourselves the something like the right or the gift of living a life hope free. But when it comes to what we're facing right now as a planet, and with the environmental crisis, is and I've debated about this with several of my friends because I'm very curious about it. Does hope not serve a purpose in 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 the sense of the sense in us that something better can come of this, even though it all looks terrible now? If we are inspired by that sense, like, and letting that sense of something possible be there, as we effort towards making that possibility, and the possibility being like saving the earth from the destruction at our own hands. Um, and so I think that was kind of a convoluted question, and I'm sorry about that, but I trust your ability to parse out what I mean, um, insofar as hope and its role right now in what we're facing as a planet with this mass extinction and environmental crisis.
Okay. Let me see what I can do with this. First of all, and to me, my mind, most importantly, that the focus of your question was not, quote, the environmental crisis. The focus of your question, although you didn't say it exactly in the way that I'm going to say it now, I hope you'll find it to be a fair representation of it, went something like this. I need to engage these dilemmas in a certain kind of feeling state, a certain kind of orientation that allows me to proceed and to take action. And that's the focus of the observation that you made. It's not what's going on in the world, and it's certainly not how we got here. It has everything to do with now I need something else. And here's what it is: I need to be properly oriented to the possibilities that could ensue from the work that I ought to take on. And that's a prerequisite. And without it, you can't reasonably expect me to sign up for active duty in a time of trouble. You didn't say all those things, but you know they were in what you said. Okay, so my point in responding to it is to articulate it as follows. When do you suppose the generations of Western people who presented us the dilemma we now find ourselves in are going to be willing to set aside their personal requirement for a personal sense of well-being and the promise that that will continue and that they shall be rewarded for the work they propose to undertake? When are Western people going to be willing to forego the payday before they do the work? Because my point is simply this: if that's what you require, it's more of the same for you. Hope, in and of itself, is engaged in I'm not saying I don't understand the draw of the thing. I believe I do. And I'm not dismissing the draw. What I'm trying to do in response to your question is elaborate the consequences of remaining addicted to the kind of methadone drip called it could still work out. I mean, make a simple observation. Do you really believe that we need to know ahead of time that it could all still work out as a precondition for working on it working out? My own encounters with these matters are basically the answer is yes. The Western world seems absolutely addicted to the reassurance that their labors will not be in vain as a prerequisite for laboring. And I just find this so, in almost a ghosted way, a kind of juvenile unwillingness to show up for active adult duty. And it really, it really sets me to lament over this matter that it's another out clause. The requiring of being hopeful is another way to make sure that nobody hits us up for too much work. You know, I've had many a person ask me some version of what you've said, other things besides, and the case that's generally made over and over again is, don't you understand? This is to me now. Don't you understand that you have to work out your personal sense of gross misfortune before you can be relied upon in the great to join the greater fray? And and it falls to me to say, so let me get this right. What do we do in the meantime, waiting for you to get your shit together, waiting for you to feel better about it all, waiting for you to be reassured that if we just find the right fill in the blank, that we're going to pull it off at the 11th hour and 59th minute? What are the rest of us supposed to do while you're trying to get it all together? You know what the answer is. We got to fill in for you. And my simple case to be made is something like this. If if I'm lucky enough to be with a dozen people who are hope free on this matter, the chances of us engaging these things without the qualification of being reassured first raises in me a sense of a trustworthiness in them and a recognizable adulthood in them and some kind of incipient elderhood in them. And I could point in the other direction and say the increasing reliance upon, feeling hopeful and having some faith that, the right technology will finally eclipse the bad technology, all that kind of thing, is virtually the same kind of dilemma as I was articulating for you about, from my point of view, the psilocybin thing, the euthanasia thing, the suicide thing. These are remarkably consistent approaches, even though they seem wildly different areas of endeavor. But if you investigate the kind of mobilizing misery that underwrites all of them, at least to my eye, they're almost garishly similar from one to the next to the next.
Hmm. For clarification, just so that you or the listeners don't get a mischaracterization of where I'm coming from, I'm very much in the camp of not believing hope is a prerequisite, or even being ready being a prerequisite to starting. And as far as I'm concerned, it seems more likely that we're all going to die off than otherwise, but that I continue to proceed efforting towards something positive in the sense of like doing the work that's required in order to, push towards what I would prefer by far, which is us to sort this giant issue out in a way that supports and enables humanity to continue on in a way that might over time regenerate the damage that we've done. and also as an uncle, considering the the consequences on the little humans in my life who I believe in. But that hope isn't required. I'm not doing it because it might still get better. I'm doing it because it feels somewhere deep in me that it's the right thing to do, even if
Hmm.
the world is ending. That it makes
As it's ending,
sense. Yes, as it's ending.
not even if,
Right.
as it's ending.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
to proceed as though my actions still matter.
Well, how about this? Rather than proceed as if my actions still matter, how about proceed as if my actions have consequence?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Mm. This is a little more neutral way of acknowledging things, isn't it? That's why I make that suggestion. I've asked people in my school constantly, I've implored them and I've insisted that they proceed as if they're agents of consequence. That's the language that we crafted early on as a kind of bracing antidote to the notion that no matter what I do, everything turns to shit, or will continue as it is, or that I'm basically consequence free because I can't trace the consequence of my action to anything that I believe in or don't believe in. These are all escape clauses, of course. And I think you're still halfway through what you wanted to say. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, I think that I believe I got out what I was intending, and you responded to it
Yeah.
appropriately. So I appreciate that.
So if the fact that you don't require hope is laudable from my point of view, that's great. But I think both of us could acknowledge that the lion's share of the people who are listening in, the chances are very good that the centrality of hope makes what I said so unpalatable as to become uh, tyrannous.
Hmm.
And so I think the dilemma that I articulated and that you distance yourself from is very much out there,
Hmm.
not in just quote the debate, not there. It's there in what doesn't happen. It's there in the failure of voluntary restraint, of voluntary withdrawal before you're left with no choice, kind of thing.
Hmm.
That's the great lament to me, is the utter unwillingness to stop instead of waiting to be stopped.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you there, Stephen. Which is why I characterized the question the way that I did initially, because I do feel like there's a lot of listeners that are coming from that perspective, and I was hoping to hear your thoughts on it the exact way that you presented, or something akin to what you offered.